Welcome to Curriculum Systems and Priorities for Plainwell Community Schools. Here is a quick introduction about where we are in Plainwell in regards to district curriculum systems. As we continue to build our systems, we need to refine them. So feedback on how the systems are operating for our students, community, and staff is critical. What we're going to talk about today covers 4 main headings. 1, curriculum handbook. We're going to dig into what's in the curriculum handbook and how to use it. Number 2, we're going to dig into department chairs, what their roles and expectations are. And then professional learning communities, which is a very important part of department chair role. And then monitoring and evaluating curriculum. We have a curriculum handbook. It is linked in the resources section of this Google Classroom. I encourage you to take the time to look at the entire handbook. However, the following are some critical pieces that you definitely need to know. Beginning in 22-23, we started our curriculum cycle. This is a 5-year cycle based on subject areas that we will evaluate, and then decide if we need to renew or adopt new curriculum based on that evaluation. Each of these steps of the 5-year plan have specific tasks attached to them monthly. There is guidance in the handbook on what needs to be accomplished for that. Department chairs work with district leadership to accomplish that. Curriculum evaluation templates. There are many evaluation templates out there. We are trying to compile an assortment of templates that can be used that are research-based, but also are helpful since curricula comes in many different sizes and shapes and colors. It also details how writing a curriculum proposal works, how there's the template for the curriculum proposal, how much you're paid for writing a curriculum proposal, if you're going to be doing curriculum writing, like actually developing curriculum, if you are going to be interested in summer or off-hours curriculum work, all of that information is there. There's a specific way to be paid for those hours if they're approved. April 30th, I put that on there because this is a deadline for all curriculum proposals annually for the next year. If I don't have it by then, I cannot get it approved. And then supplemental resources in curricula. This came out of our title audit. These supplemental resources in curricula need to be tightly aligned to the core curriculum, which has a rigorous evaluation and adoption process, and therefore, and is also board approved. And we should also consider horizontal and vertical alignment as we work through that piece. Department chairs wear different hats. They are PLC leaders in their teams. They are building leaders representing their PLCs, and they're district leaders representing their teams and their buildings. These are 3 distinct hats that often are intertwined and can be a lot of different pieces to the department chair position. So we're going to dig into it and talk about what we're doing and how we're doing it and what the expectations are. This is the nuts and bolts of the job description for department chairs. If you go through each of these, you'll see that there are some more task items, and then there are some more characteristic items, like promoting success for all students. I want to focus in on the task pieces. Leading PLCs. So right off the bat, that is a pretty big responsibility in and of itself. The past year, 2 years, we have been working on developing PLCs, again, doing it very slowly, by developing curriculum maps and a viable curriculum, and then developing our vertical alignment and priority standards, which is our next big piece of work, and then eventually common assessments. We are scaffolding and getting our groups to where they are going to be able to maintain that work rather than have to create it. So in a few years, and you'll see the timeline soon, in a few years, this will really be a little easier. But right now, this is a huge piece for these chairs. And oftentimes they're involved in other things like multi-tiered systems of support for PBIS, things like that. So this is a huge piece right here. We're going to come back to that a little bit more. But if you look at some of the simpler things like developing meeting agendas, establishing a meeting schedule, preparing and reporting minutes, something that we haven't been very good at, but we're going to have to get better at. I'll talk about how that system will work momentarily. And manage the department, providing communication to their uh, team on text adoptions, things like that. That's where that 5-year cycle comes in. And we'll start to see that the steps that are involved in this are shorter, unless they're in a review year. And then it becomes a little longer. So some years it's longer, some years it's shorter. That should help a little bit so that it's not always part of a huge responsibility that they have to do. Recommending and providing in-service training for their department. We're really going to scale back. We have already scaled back on that. It isn't that we don't want them to provide in-service training to their teams, but we don't want them to be required to do that when we have other means for that. So this would be really more of a something that comes out of maybe some action research or something, but otherwise we're kind of keeping that separate. Assisting new teachers with methodology, technique, materials. Unfortunately, no matter how many mentors and coaches, academic coaches we have, um, there's really going to be that natural leaning on your department chair because they're in the classroom still. So they're living the life, although in our middle and high school, those coaches are also in the classroom still, but there's some cred there. And then you also have to lean on them for materials and things like that. So that is sometimes an unfair piece that gets put on department chairs, but unfortunately is a reality. Serving as a member of the district improvement and leadership team. Basically, I'm going to be reducing the number of meetings that they've been doing and really only focusing on the nuts and bolts of that evaluation and curriculum systems, and then approving, new curriculum and proposals in the spring. And then participating actively in the district-wide vertical content committee. That's going to be something that we're going to pay people for doing outside of their normal workday. So we're going to have some evenings where we will do this vertical content work. So we may or may not have, I want all department chairs to be part of it, but hopefully we'll have more than just department chairs part of that. So going back to leading PLCs, I'm going to dig into that a little bit more, but in a minute. But I wanted to also come back on number 5 and 6 here: reporting minutes, maintaining records. I am not collecting anything. Well, I should rephrase that. I don't plan to collect anything from everybody every year. However, I'm hoping that I'm going to instruct our department chairs to keep notes, minutes, things like that. Some of them will have very neat typed up, and some will have chicken scratch. I don't care. But every year I'm going to pick 3 random uh, PLCs, and I'm going to ask for copies of their meeting minutes and notes. That is just so I have samples for our title audit in the next 10 years. So whomever, if it's me or whomever is in this position, is easy time pulling that, and it creates systems that we have to monitor to some level, but we can allow them to do it however they want to do it. And I'm going to encourage them to not do the notes themselves, but to assign someone in their department that responsibility. So when you look back at these things, it seems like quite a lot of hats to wear and some pretty big, heavy hats. So whenever you can, pull people into your leadership teams, your committees, things like that, that aren't necessarily your department chairs. It helps kind of spread out the wealth a little bit and diversify the perspectives. Here are our department chair meetings for the district. We have our 2:45 to 3:45 for secondary and 3:45 to 4:45 for elementary. We're going to hit the basics, like I said, of curriculum systems and PLC stuff. And then in May every year, we will do our curriculum council, where we will look at proposals and make recommendations to the board. And then unless otherwise specified, that will be at central office. Now, digging more into PLCs, like I said we would. It's a huge piece of what department chairs do. It's a huge piece of curriculum and instruction. Ideally, PLCs are based on grade level or department or subject or however they may be developed. They often have common planning, and they're working on basically collective inquiry, looking at what is working, what's not working, refining their common assessments to ensure that they are operating correctly, looking at the data when students aren't performing well on the assessments, looking at whether it's a question issue or if it's a comprehension issue, a scaffolding issue, creating balanced assessments, doing action research. This is where you are using your street level data. So going from, say, I find out my NWEA that my students are really struggling with long vowel sounds. And that's coming out of my NWEA data or my F&P data or whatever. I'm going to take that and say, okay, we're going to try this. We've met together. We've decided this is our common assessment, what it looks like, so that it reflects what we need. And then we're going to build our plan around that. And then we're going to collect that data and see if it worked, to see if we need to offer intervention or advancement or both. And we're going to do this by prioritizing our standards, all in a data-centered way. So this is a lot, but what we have been doing in the past year or so is creating a district-wide scaffold to get to the point where PLCs can be more self-driven. So focusing on the vertical alignment this year will help us with priority standards that we developed last year, aligning them vertically, adjusting the priority standards. We probably will do if we're vertically aligning correctly. And then once we have that, determining what our common assessments look like. And because we have those priority standards, we can really meet with our PLCs and do common planning, actually developing lesson plans that are based on data and our action research that are for our priority standards. So this isn't something that is doable for every lesson that you're going to teach, or even most lessons that you're going to teach. This is few lessons, but these are high priority. So as I said, we've really focused on trying to scaffold this so that we can get into a place where our district is ready to continue this work. We have established a viable curriculum by creating maps and scopes and sequences. And we've identified priority standards at our specific grade or subject area level. And we've started our curriculum evaluation cycle. This year, we're stepping into the year looking at vertical alignment of those priority standards. So we said this is super important that they know X and Y before they leave third grade. So, is that still true in fourth grade? How does that feed into fourth grade and fifth grade? So, we're going to start working on that. And then we're digging into our K5 ELA curricula. And as we adopt new curricula, if we adopt new curricula, we will be building those curriculum maps. So continuing everything that we've done, identifying, making sure those priority standards are still um, a part of what we want. But again, we're doing this, so a lot of that will get tweezed out in that process. And then in 24-25, we're going to focus more on common formative assessments. So how do we measure this to ensure that the things that we prioritize, we say are priority, and we then develop curricula and we develop lessons around that we use street level data, action research. How are we assessing it to make sure that we're getting the best information and actually assessing what we want? And then we'll start evaluating our non-core curricula, all our electives, exploratory, etc. Monitoring and evaluation. It's a really exciting part of curriculum. Here is what an ideal curriculum evaluation cycle really looks like in a visual way. The first thing we have to do is when it comes time to review, we have to ask ourselves, do we need anything new? If our student data is doing really well and our fidelity is doing like off the charts, and we just don't see any reason to steer differently, we don't have to move beyond this step. But if we decide we do have needs, that's where we look at what does the data tell us? What are we seeing in terms of the monitoring? That this comes right down here, the annual monitoring. What are we seeing in those monitoring tools? What's it telling us with fidelity? Things like that. And then we give it to the teachers who are teaching that curricula to identify what are the gaps, what's missing. And then we come back and we search for solutions. We look for what the gap analysis said, what the comprehensive needs assessment said, and we start looking for possible solutions to that curriculum problem. And then we start narrowing the options. We may have financial things to consider. We may have research-based things to consider. Narrowing those options, then bringing out a pilot or a proposal if we want to pilot more than one, or if we want to just adopt and write a proposal, and then monitor annually, specifically looking at fidelity and the success of it. Is the curriculum being used with fidelity in the manner that it is intended? So, a couple quick questions and answers just to round this out before we close up. Does the cycle, the curriculum cycle, mean we're going to adopt new curriculum every 5 years? And the answer is no. That is really to evaluate and review curriculum. Um, we may need to adopt every 5 years in some areas. We may not adopt for 15 years. It's about really giving ourselves the time to review that curriculum and make adjustments. We may decide that we only need a supplement, in which case um, we just add that supplement. Another question, can a curriculum proposal be made off cycle? So if it's the year for math, but I'm a science teacher and we want to add a class, can I write that class? Yes, you can. That April 30th date is critical in order for anything to get moving. And I will tell you that in the curriculum handbook, it does say that you should notify me in February if you're doing an off cycle proposal, just to let me know that you're planning to do it. That helps me budget and everything, but April 30th is the absolute last time to tell me that. All right, and that is everything. I want to thank you for taking part in this module and enjoy the